Hello everybody and welcome back. This is going to be our final section here talking about things which the glacier deposits. We're talking about deposition of sediment as the glacier retreats. That is our setting here. This including eskers, drumlins, kettles, connahs, and moraines. So this diagram here, if you have to reference anything, studying for a test, you might remember where this is and go back and look because this has all the terms on it sort of in one page. First, we're going to talk in detail about eskers. So, the glacier, we have this solid chunk of ice, but it is very possible. Actually, it's very, very common to have these little cavities filled with water, have this subglacial melt water, which is running beneath the glacier. So, as this runs, it's going to deposit sediment, things which are ripped up by the glacier, like till here, and it's going to deposit along this little river below the glacier. And what's going to form is the esker, sort of 3D snaking ridge of sedimentary material. So it's going to look something like this here. You can actually see this sort of snaking line of material. So originally this would have been at the very, very bottom of the glacier in this little hole where a river is flowing through and taking sediment with it and depositing it along the way. You also have things we call drumlins. So you might imagine, we have this mound, which is just here already. We don't care about how it got there. And as the glacier flows over it, it rounds it out into this sort of like an upside down spoon shape, like a teardrop shape, almost like a half an egg is being submerged below the ground here. It sort of smooths out the hill until you get something like this. And part of what is important about these is you would actually take a look at a feature like this, the drumlin, and be able to tell which way the glacier was moving. In this case, so we look at this, we look at this side, and try to figure out which way do you think the glacier was moving based on what we're looking at here. So, more than likely, glacier was moving left to right, whichever direction this is, moving to the right on the screen. You have the shorter side over here, and the more elongated side over here for the drumlin. So you also have what are called kettles. So they really do look like potholes whenever you see one of these on the landscape. We'll get to that in a little bit. Setting for these. So you imagine that we have a glacier which is at the end of its life, starting to melt and to break off into different chunks. And these chunks get surrounded by water, and sediment is deposited in that water, and it sort of forms around these ice chunks. So then later, once the ice chunks all melt, you have these sort of circular holes inside of the landscape. So the hole itself is the kettle. These typically get filled with water later, not the original glacial water, but some sort of rainwater after the fact. It becomes a Kettle Lake. And this is what we're looking at here. These are not sinkholes. These are little kettle lakes that we're seeing, sort of pothole type depressions as a result of glacial melt and break into these different ice chunks. Also have these sort of corresponding landforms, which are kames. So these are the hills, right? The kettles are the depressions, the kames are the hills. You have these sediment accumulation between the broken ice chunks. So we talked about this sediment which fills in around the ice chunks. Well, later, once the ice melts, you have this alternating kame, kettle, sort of topography. Great example of one of these. Have these they're usually very, very round, circular type hills, sort of out of the middle. Now, last thing we're going to talk about here are moraines. At the edges of the glacier, you build up all of this sediment around it. So this is going to be some mass of ground up rock material, which is deposited usually as some sort of ridge along the edge of the glacier. So we have our different valley glaciers here, and we have our lateral, so at the outside, medial, kind of in the middle, and end moraines, in this case, at the very end of the glacier. And we can actually focus on these a little bit more. So here is our valley glacier. Try to identify where the different moraines are related to this glacier. Give it a moment. So I would say that there is an end moraine here at the very end of the glacier, and that these two are lateral moraines, little buildups, little rock ridges over at the edge. And we'll go ahead and do the same. This picture should look familiar, hopefully. Try to identify where the moraines are related to these valley glaciers, this here in the middle. So I would say that we have lateral moraines, which are on the outside here, and that these sort of shorter, kind of skinny black lines here in the middle are medial moraines. So what are our big ideas for the section? Bit of a short section. You'll want to be familiar with those 5 types of glaciers that we talked about, the erosional landforms and the depositional landforms. For this one, it's kind of a dense unit, a lot of terms, a lot of information sort of packed together tightly, but really all of it is important. I'll see you next time.